When naming compounds, the first thing you want to ask yourself is, does it start with hydrogen? If it starts with hydrogen, that means it's an acid, and we're going to use our acid rules. If it doesn't start with hydrogen, then ask yourself, does it start with a nonmetal? The nonmetals are located on the right of the periodic table. And so any of these over here on the right, if it starts with any of these, then we would use prefixes to name that. And again, our prefixes are located here. So make sure you know which prefixes correspond to which number. And then if it starts with a metal, then that means it's ionic. So these are going to be acids, these are going to be covalent, and finally these are ionic if it starts with group 1A, 2A, silver, zinc, cadmium, aluminum, gallium, or ammonium. And then it's going to be I star, which is the ones that we need Roman numerals for, if it starts with any metal other than those. Group 1A, we know 2A, silver, zinc, cadmium, aluminum, and gallium. Those are the ones we know the charge for, and therefore those do not need Roman numerals. So the first thing we need to do is figure out what type of compound each of these are. So go through and figure out if it's an acid. Remember, acids start with hydrogen. If it's covalent, it's going to start with a nonmetal. If it's ionic, it should start with group 1A, 2A, silver, zinc, cadmium, aluminum, gallium, or ammonium. And I star is everything else. So if you need to go back and write this page down, then do so. Once you have figured out which type of compound each of these are, then restart the video. So the first one starts with potassium, and that's in group 1A, so that should have been regular ionic. The second one starts with nitrogen, which is a nonmetal, so that should have been covalent. The third one starts with a metal, but it's not one of the ones we know the charge of, so that's going to be I star. The next one starts with hydrogen, so that's an acid. And the last one starts with phosphorus, which is a nonmetal, so that should be covalent. So at this point, once you identify your different types, you can name all of one of the types. So if we wanted to go through and name all of our acids, we need to use our acid rules. Our acid rules, so this one's an acid, so we know it's something acid. We look at the second part, NO2. If it helps, you may want to write out the name of what NO2 is. That's nitrite. We get that from the back of your periodic table. We have nitrite is NO2. Make sure that you're choosing the correct one, not NO3, but NO2. So nitrite, according to our rules, ITE is going to go to OUS acid. So we just rewrite nitrite, but instead of putting ITE, we're going to put OUS and then the word acid. So we have nitrous acid. Then I'm going to go and do my covalent ones. If it's covalent, I need to use prefixes. The prefixes indicate the number of each atom present. So for this first one, nitrogen, I have 3 of them. The prefix for 3 was tri, so it's trinitrogen. Notice I didn't change the ending of that first one. And then I have 7. 7 was hepta. So I put hepta, and then oxygen is going to turn into oxide. So that one should get its ending changed to IDE. Notice I didn't cross anything. I didn't reduce anything. I'm just writing exactly what the name gives me. And then the last one is covalent, so I only have 1 phosphorus. The prefix for 1 is mono, but we drop mono for the first one. So it's phosphorus, and then I've got 4. 4 was tetra, and then again oxygen is oxide. Now for my ionic, if it's just regular ionic, I'm going to name my 2 pieces. K is potassium. And then SO4, I have on here, SO4 is sulfate. I do not change the ending of a polyatomic ion. I only change the ending of our elements. And then for that last one, it's I star. If it's I star, I need to work backwards. So first, I look and find hydroxide. And hydroxide has a -1 charge. So I'm going to write -1 on my paper. And then I multiply by the number on the outside of parentheses. So you're going to multiply the number on the outside of the parentheses, or if it's an element, you would just multiply. But if there's no parentheses, then you cannot multiply if it's a polyatomic ion. So -1 times 3 is -3. So that means iron must be a +3 to cancel that out. So we get iron 3 because that Roman numeral is telling us the charge of the metal. And then OH was hydroxide. I don't change the ending of the polyatomic ion, it just ended in IDE on its own. So go ahead and figure out which type of compound each of these are. Restart when you're done. So this first one started with H, so you should have said acid. The second one is lead. That's a metal, but it's not one of the ones we know the charge of, so that's I star. P is a non-metal. Since it's a non-metal, it should be covalent. Zinc is a metal, and we know the charge of zinc is always a +2, so that's ionic. And the last one starts with H, so that's an acid. I'm going to pause the video and try doing these 5 on your own. Restart once you've named them. So just like a second ago, I'm going to go and name my acids first. So the first one is an acid, and that was nitrogen. Nitrogen in a compound would be nitride. IDE goes to hydroic acid. Notice that the only time I have hydro in front is if it ended in IDE. So that's going to be elements and cyanide. So I'm going to put hydro in front, NITR, and then ic acid. So I'm dropping the IDE and putting ic acid at the end with hydro at the beginning. And then the bottom one's an acid, so I'm looking at the bottom and it's ClO3. So this one is ClO3. So that's chlorate. ATE should go to ic acid. Notice there's no hydro in front, just ic acid. So I'm going to write everything except the ATE. And then I'm going to change it to ic acid. So now I'm going to go and do my covalent one. And if it's covalent, I'm using prefixes. I've got 7. 7 was hepta. And then P is phosphorus. And then 9 was nona. And Cl is chlorine, but that's going to change to chloride. I'm going to go and do my regular ionic next. So Zn was zinc. And regular ionic, I'm just naming my 2 pieces. And then P, we said a second ago, is phosphorus. But if it's the second one, it's going to change to phosphide, because we're going to change it to IDE. Okay, and then the last one we need Roman numerals for. So I look at the second one, and we've got phosphate. Phosphate is a -3 charge. Notice that this is a polyatomic ion, and it's not in parentheses. So I do not multiply. If it helps, you can put parentheses around it and put a 1 there. So I've got a -3 overall, which means lead needs to be a +3 in this case. So I've got lead 3 phosphate. Because again, I'm not changing the ending of my polyatomic ion. I'm leaving it as it is.